You got to be in your little rectangle on time.
That's right. Well, it's
Hi,
wonderful,
friends.
everyone. And as soon as
we are going to send this live in just a moment. I just wanted everyone to know that this will also be live on Facebook and YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But the rest of the day is going to be taking place on Zoom. So I am going to let Rabbi Susan introduce the rest of the day, and I'm going to send us live. And
wait, Daniel, just a clarification. Yeah. You mean the rest of the breakouts will only be on Zoom, but the Yizkor and Nila will be on Facebook and YouTube?
Everything will also be on Facebook and YouTube, including what's happening in the breakout rooms. But Yizkor and Nila will happen in Zoom, so we can all see each other. So the whole rest of the day, all the rabbis will be on Zoom. This is how we'll be doing it. It won't be on vMix, Randy. It'll all be in here for us.
No, I understand. But people could, if people choose not to be on Zoom, they could watch it on YouTube.
Of course. Yep.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Either way, or however it works for folks. Okay, so one moment, Rabbi Susan, I am going to spotlight you, and then give me a second to turn it live.
Rabbi Daniel, should we mute everybody else?
I'm not now. Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the very first of our breakout sessions on this Yom Kippur of 5781. Well, when we thought about what we wanted to highlight, you know, there's just so much going on in our streets and in the streets of really many places around the world. We have a young man who's been coming to our services for 15 years. He tells me who's from Belarus. And as you know, the leader of Belarus, who lost the election, refused to step down. So there have been peaceful protests in the streets of Belarus. And I've been in touch with him because his family are among the protesters, and they've been arrested and they've been shot in the streets because Lukashenko doesn't want to abdicate his presidency. So law enforcement and law and order and how we vision law enforcement is really important, and it's become more and more important for us. So who better to invite than the Callis Professor of Law Emeritus at St. Louis University, our own Roger Goldman, who is the nation's foremost expert in police decertification and license revocation laws. So he is the expert in something very specific when it comes to law enforcement, but really very crucial. Because the most important thing that we expect from the people who are there to protect us is that we can trust them. Now, we know that our Jewish family includes people of color, police officers who are both Black and white, and those who are committed to protesting and working until we do have systems of law enforcement, systems of public safety that really we can count on, we can trust, and keep us safe. It's complicated in the Jewish community because we're not exactly sure where we fit. Do we stand with the protesters who are demanding accountability? Or do we stand with many people who are afraid that if they alienate law enforcement, that they will be put themselves and their communities at risk? So we decided that it would be really important to hear from our own Roger Goldman, not only this expert, national, really international expert in policing, but also CRC's founder, and CRC's very first president. Roger, you've devoted so much of your life to us, you and Stephanie, and now the next generation, Josh Goldman, head of our Tikkun Olam Steering Committee. And we know you've also devoted your long legal career to holding police accountable. And so we've invited Roger to tell his story. We'll spend about 20 minutes with Roger, and then we're going to go to breakout groups and have a chance in smaller groups to speak about our own personal experience. I'll frame some questions for us, and then we'll come back and maybe share some of the reflections that we've had with each other. So Roger, if you're ready.
We need a test. You have to tell me if I'm on mute or not mute.
You're not on mute. You're fine.
I'm fine. Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks for the introduction, Susan. I thought I would tell you my story, and then then we can talk about other remedies besides the one that I'm going to focus on. But I think you'll find it instructive how I got involved in this topic. So particularly since the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, there has been a national conversation about decertification. I've been researching this topic for over 40 years, but let me tell you how I got started. Notice how many of the discussions and protests have involved the killing of a suspect, often African-American. That certainly was true of George Floyd. So let me tell you my George Floyd equivalent, how I first got interested in this topic. The Post-Dispatch had a series of articles written by our own member, Paul Wagman, and Bill Freibergel, who you know, back in the 70s. And it was about a lieutenant who was number 2 at the Maplewood Police Department, and who would do the following to get confessions from suspects: play Russian roulette, stick a pistol down a suspect's throat and say, "suck on it," and other outrageous conduct like that. After 2 of his patrolmen in the department played Russian roulette with a mentally challenged young man suspected of trying to cash a stolen $80 cashier's check, the lieutenant was fired, but he was then hired by a chief at a tiny department. Some of you may be familiar with Bridgeton Terrace out by the airport, one of 90 municipalities that had a police department. And the chief at that department knew exactly from Wagman and Freibergel's articles what this fellow had done at Maplewood, but nonetheless hired him. But that's only part of the story, because after he was hired part-time, he had a full-time job back in Maplewood selling clothes. And he sees a man, African-American, sitting in his car. He assumed his car was going to be stolen. We don't, of course, know what happened, because he told the guy to get out of the car, and he shot and he killed him. So really, 2 deaths, you could say, were on his watch. Well, I was astounded that he could be hired after what he did at Maplewood, and he could have been hired. There was nothing in Missouri that stopped a rehiring of a clearly unfit officer. And that's when I was president of the local ACLU at the time, and along with Joyce Armstrong and Sheila Lumpy, some of you may remember her, a representative from U City, wonderful person, and working with Clarence Harmon, who at the time was head of internal affairs, we decided it would be better for him to do the testimony, head of internal affairs at the city department. And his testimony was crucial, because what he told the legislators in Jeff City was that in about 90% of the time, when he would fire an officer from St. Louis City, they'd be working within the next week at a tiny department out in the county. And indeed, that's what happened with this particular officer that we're talking about. Governor Ashcroft signed the bill, and in 1988, Missouri became one of the first 15 states to get this ability to stop the movement of clearly unfit officers from one department to another. And the good news is Missouri has one of the most active laws in the country. You won't believe this, but since '88, we have decertified 1,000 officers in Missouri, which puts us in the top 10% in the country in decertifications. The term for these officers is the current term, used to be rogue officers. It's now wandering officers who wander from department to department with these terrible records and get fired. It turns out that Florida, there was a recent study done, 1,000 officers who were fired from department ended up working in another department in Florida, and within a short period of time were fired from the new department. So that it's much more likely, if you've got a bad record, it seems kind of obvious that you're going to be fired again. So when I got started, only 15 states were decertified. I've been working with states all over the country since then. And now all but 5 states have this ability to decertify officers. You might be surprised to hear the states that don't have this ability: California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. Very blue progressive states. And you might wonder why that would be the situation. When I teach this course at law school, the students always say, oh, it's Alabama who doesn't have it, or Mississippi. And it turns out the states with the most active decertification programs are Georgia and Florida. Their cops are no worse there, but they have very strong laws to ensure police accountability. The good news is that the federal government has now gotten interested in this topic, and a couple of federal agencies are now decertifying federal law enforcement officers, including law enforcement officers in the Department of Defense and the National Park Service. And recent discussion, you may have followed, there's some federal laws being discussed in the past couple of months, that they are conditioning giving federal funds to states that have strong decertification laws. The other thing to know about is that I've been working at the state and federal level to have a way to track these decertified officers. And I made a recommendation to the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, which the current administration is not interested in doing, in enforcing. And my idea was made a recommendation, which is that the federal government ought to be involved in a data bank, just the way they have a data bank on errant healthcare professionals, so that a doctor, a nurse, whatever, who is fired for misconduct, who's found guilty of malpractice, will go on this national data bank. And I've been arguing that if we do it for docs, why not for cops? So far, it hasn't happened, but I'm hopeful that it will be. So I think I'll stop there, just giving you that background. And really what I would like to suggest is that if we could get that kind of improvement with something that seems so obvious, we should be able to do it with other police accountability measures. And I think in the breakout sessions, we'll probably talk about the lack of effectiveness of some of these other remedies. So Susan, I think I'll stop there.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for framing that. What we were really hoping, since it is Yom Kippur, is to, and you know, whenever we it's not the first time we've had these sessions, because of course police accountability and our relationship with law enforcement and public safety is so important. But we, you know, we always get some people coming up to us at the end saying, you know, I'm a police officer, or my loved one is a police officer, and you know, the idea isn't to take a side here. It's for the common good to figure out ways to make the system better. And you know, I do want to also say that, you know, there's a trigger line out there that's, I think, really misunderstood, and that is when protesters are saying defund police. They're not, I don't think they're really saying, you know, defund police. They're saying reimagine law enforcement, reimagine public safety. So what we're going to do now is have there's monitors out there, and they're going to break us into smaller groups. And in the groups, we're hoping that you would reflect on what Roger has said, how it's taken him a lifetime, 40 years really, to get to where he is today. And in the chats to maybe answer these questions. Number 1, have you ever been profiled? Number 2, what makes you safe, feel safe in your community? Number 3, what was your visceral response to the George Floyd video? Was that a turning point for you? And how do you feel today about the non-indictment? You know, we've had our own cases of non-indictment with Mike Brown, with the Stokely case here, Anthony Lamar Smith. What about the non-indictment of the police officers in the Breonna Taylor case? So those are lots of things to reflect on. We're going to give everyone, I think, we've got a good 20 minutes actually to give you to reflect in your small groups. And what we'd love for one person in each group to do is to put a reflection or something that comes out of your group into the chat so that Roger can respond to some of your questions and thoughts when we come back together in 20 minutes. Should I repeat the questions? Okay, there we go.
Do you want to put the questions in the chat?
Yes.
Or maybe we won't, I don't know.
Do I need to do that? I can do that. I'll do it. So go to your chats and I'll put them there.
Hi, everyone. This is Rabbi Daniel here. If you run into issues with the breakout rooms, everyone should get a pop-up right now that should invite you to the breakout room. So click on the button accepting that. If you run into any issues, feel free to leave the breakout room and come back here, or just message us or unmute yourself or write in the chat or whatever we can do to help. Hi, folks. I see there are 23 people here. If you're having trouble joining a breakout room and you'd like to, please unmute yourself or chat and let me know, and I'm happy to help you. But if you're choosing to hang out here rather than go into a breakout room, that is totally fine as well. But there are breakout rooms happening right now where people are talking about those questions.
How do you join one of them?
Daniel.
Hey, Charlene.
Did you hear him?
I did not.
Hi, this is Ben. I was wondering how you join one of the breakout rooms.
Ben, what is your last name?
Moskowitz.
Moskowitz. Sorry, I'm just trying to find you in this list in the. Charlene, someone just joined. Will you admit them?
I just let them in.
Thank you. There you are, Ben. Okay, I'm gonna try moving you to a different room, Ben, to see if it gives you a pop-up. That's my hope.
Okay.
You should have just gotten one.
I don't see one.
Move your mouse around, look at the buttons on the bottom, look and see if there's
Oh,
a.
okay. Yep. Great. So it says you've been assigned to a certain breakout room.
Yep, and then you should just be able to click accept.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And actually, I just realized that we are live streaming. So if you are one of the folks who is watching this live, if you head to centralreform.org /High Holy Days, you will find a link to join the Zoom room, and we would love for you to join us. Again, centralreform.org /High Holy Days, and you can find a link. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the live feed again. So folks, if you were watching this on YouTube or Facebook, I see that there are 12 people watching. I apologize. I am going to turn these off. Go to centralreform.org /High Holy Days, and there will be a link for the Zoom room.